There are more of us. Hello, what have we here? And welcome, Claudia Gray, to the There Are More of Us show.
Hello there.
It's great to have you on here. I've caught you at a couple of cons, so it was kind of happenstance, and then I think you're coming to my local con when I can't be there. So,
Which is your local con?
Motor City.
Yes, I am heading to that one soon. I've done the show before. It's great.
Yeah, I'll be at a wedding this time, so I can't make it this year. But I know it's gonna
Darn
you're gonna have a
friends.
good time there. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just you love them and you wanna I love love, so gotta be there. So for those that are not familiar with your work, what kind of content do you make?
Let's see. I've written a lot of science fiction and fantasy, primarily for younger readers, though I've been moving toward more adult work lately. I am, let's see, I'm the author of several Star Wars books and some comics. A trilogy for DC Comics. I have done a book of The Haunted Mansion and a book of The X Files will be coming this July. And finally, I also do a Jane Austen Agatha Christie mashup mystery series. So it's all over the
A
place.
little bit of everything.
Mm-hmm.
My friend Malik has sworn me up and down that I need to read your DC material because it's on Krypton, and I hear there's a lawyer involved in some way, shape, or form. So I'm like, well, lawyer sold.
I had a lot of fun doing the House of L trilogy.
Yeah, and then of course you did Master and Apprentice, which is a really good
Mm-hmm.
uh um Qui-Gon Obi-Wan book. I hold in the same esteem that I hold the Jude Watson novels, the ones I grew up on. Uh
Oh, wow.
and then,
Yeah, I love those.
Lost Stars, just heart-wrenching, and I'm begging for a sequel.
I would love to do one. I still feel like someday that's gonna happen, but a lot depends on when Lucasfilm decides they would like that. So your guess is as good as mine.
The fan base is there and ready.
I will say I do always think about it. You know, it's not like I would just start making something up
Hmm.
if they ever did call and said they wanted that. But at the same time, even though I know the ending's ambiguous, if it does end there, I am okay with it.
Hmm.
It's kind of the Casablanca ending, I guess.
Yeah. So you've been a writer for a while. You've done a long list of Star Wars things, including the High Republic. But what is your Star Wars story? How'd you get into Star Wars, and why do you love it?
It really dates me, but I'm always a little surprised when people are like, "So how did you get into Star Wars?" Because I turned 7 the year it came out.
Hmm.
So I was that in that very first wave of kids that it just hit, and it dominated so much of my childhood. Those movies coming out, and I had the posters on my wall, and well, not on my wall. My mom was like, "No poster on the walls," but they could be on the doors.
Hmm.
So my closet and bedroom doors always had a fair Star Wars representation there. We had so many of those toys that if we had not played them into oblivion would be worth a great deal of money now. So I was always into it. I don't really remember much of my childhood before it,
Hmm.
I guess you would say. Um, and yeah, it's never stopped. It's never gone away. I mean, it's paused,
Yeah.
but I was there at Walden Books to get Heir to the Empire
Hmm.
by Timothy Zahn. Walden Books in the mall. Was excited to get that. Have been excited as all these different things have come out over this time.
Yeah, it's been a wonderful time to be a Star Wars fan, at least for what I say my entire life, because it did have all the Legends books that were coming out, and then you had the prequels, then you had the all like the floodgates opened as soon as the Phantom Menace came out. You had all these books and
Oh
video
yeah,
games and trading cards, and I think that's the golden era of Star Wars, and now we're in the renaissance of Star Wars.
maybe. I definitely remember that when the prequels were coming out, you could not imagine how excited my friends and I
Hmm.
were. It's like, that pony we'd been promised for our birthday. You know, 2 decades prior, the pony was actually going to show up. And then of course, the neighbor kids, your generation were coming and getting into them, and they would come over and like want to tell us things about Star Wars, and it was just like, oh, you are not going to out trivia us on this. You're not. We were grown up. Like, I don't even remember how we knew the name of the Wookiee planet was Kashyyyk,
Hmm.
because it's not like it ever comes up in the original trilogy, but we all knew somehow.
Yeah, so my older brother got me into Star Wars. He had we had the original trilogy on VHS, and so he says I was running around as a rambunctious toddler would, and he sat me down as like, "You're gonna watch Star Wars, so I don't have to deal with you." And then, of course, we went to go see the Phantom Menace when it came out, and so now obviously doing the content creation thing and everything like that, going to Celebration. And I like to say to him, since he was, I was his Padawan, I was like, I am what has grown beyond you. That is the true burden of all masters. And he hates it when I say that every time. He's like, no, much to learn you still have.
That's great.
As brothers do. But Star Wars is a generational tale, and I'm glad that my nieces have that for when they do get into Star Wars. They're not there yet. They like Young Jedi Adventures, but they're not there yet where they can start getting into like Clone Wars and Rebels and sit down and watch a 2.5
Right.
hour movie.
That's part of why I'm so glad we do have Young Jedi Adventures. I feel like Star Wars has been seriously overdue for an animated show that is truly for kids
Hmm.
and little kids. Because I love Rebels, I love Clone Wars. They're not for little children,
No.
animated, but that is not what they are. And I think we've been overdue for a show like Young Jedi Adventures that lets the little kids imagine themselves in that world.
Yeah, because it's like, oh yeah, the Clone Wars film, sure, great for kids. Then you see, Asajj Ventress impale someone and then kiss them, and you're just like, just cover your eyes for a second.
Yeah, it's like, wait a second here. Yeah, I'm still really upset about, was it the Zillo Beast?
Yeah,
Oh my god, I'm still traumatized.
yeah. I was just like, and then they never get let a Zillow Beast have something. Just let them live in peace. Because you have the Clone Wars, then you have the Bad Batch, then you have I don't think it's the Rise of Kylo Ren, but another one of the Kylo Ren comics, and I'm just like, let the Godzilla of Star Wars live in peace, okay?
Yes, yes. As a great Godzilla fan as well, I sympathize with this on many levels.
Oh yeah, I'm also a big Godzilla fan. I saw -1 in theaters several times, and I see all the MonsterVerse films
It's so
because,
great,
you
right?
know, exactly. If I want to see Big Lizard punch Big Monkey, I want to go see Big Lizard punch Big Monkey.
I was not spoiled for the fact that Mothra was going to regenerate, and literally when I realized that was happening in
Mm.
it, I was like punching my husband's arm. Mothra's my very favorite, and he was cracking up because he was like, "There's no controlling her now. Mothra's in it. Mothra's in it. It's all over."
Yeah, I didn't get spoiled for that. But when
Sorry,
she was
spoilers for
gone in
those
King of
who've
the
not seen it.
They'll have a little bit of time between now and then, but yeah, spoilers. I'll have my editor throw up a spoiler section for that. Um,
Okay.
but yeah, when Mothra, died in King of the Monsters, I was just like, that's. I mean, I know she could regenerate, but like, that's it. She was here for one movie, and then
I know. And they had something like in the credits after, they said something like his Mothra regenerating, so they hinted that it was going to happen, but I was not anticipating it, and then
Mhm.
there she was, being awesome. So I was very, very happy in the way that monsters make me happy.
Exactly.
Sorry to keep wobbling around. Yesterday was arm day at the gym, and I am discovering I can only hold my phone so long
I
in each
oh,
position.
I get that. I get that. Earlier today, I'm in the 501st, so I was doing Vader at a children's hospital
Hmm.
visit, and so my shoulders are feeling that right now. So that was a little slumped.
Oh,
Like, yeah, I'm leaning on my table.
yeah.
um, but yeah, so as a Star Wars author, and someone has talked with Lucasfilm and worked with other Star Wars authors, you should have a unique perspective to what does Star Wars mean to you.
It's a hard question to answer, mostly because it has been so much, it's been so formative to my imagination
Hmm.
and to my idea of what I want to see in stories. That's one of the core things that established that. I mean, I was joking around at a con once, and I was like, "Who would I be if I'd never seen Star Wars? Like, would I be into sports
Hmm.
or something? Like, what would have happened? I have no idea." I'd also say it's a really good age to have your connection to reality severed. It's just
Yeah.
gone. Um, from that time on, I was into not only Star Wars, but also like other science fiction, which leads you into fantasy, which leads you into other things. For all the like bickering, oh, you can only be a fan of this franchise, not them franchise. I think the reality for most of us who are big fans is like if you're a really big fan of something, you're probably at least somewhat of a fan of a few other things too.
Hmm.
We are the people who really invest in our narrative. We care about our stories. They mean something to us.
Hmm.
And there tends to be more than one. And so Star Wars probably inadvertently got me into all this other stuff that I've also loved throughout the ages. But what's really amazing to me and that I can't get over is that I now actually get to do this professionally.
Hmm.
If I were able to go back in time, to like 11-year-old me and be like, guess what your job is going to be? I would not have been able to believe it.
Hmm.
I might have just exploded with joy.
Yeah. I don't know how you any person that is in worked for Lucasfilm, whether it's an actor or a writer, artist, can go back to their child self and say, "Yeah, I'm that thing we love. Yeah, I'm creating things for it now," and have their child self be like, "I don't believe you."
Yeah, and it's great. And like in terms of what it might mean to me in some larger context, I kind of feel like Qui-Gon's speech to Rael and Master and Apprentice says that for me. I think the thing that makes it Star Wars is that turn toward the light or
Hmm.
that call toward the light. Even the grittiest stuff, if it has that call to the light at the center of it, you know.
Yeah, like as much as we love the bad guys, it's
Mhm.
the light side of the force that we all like. We more want to be Jedi than we actually want to be Sith.
Oh yeah, and it's not even just a matter for the Jedi.
Hmm.
It matters that this bounty hunter looks down at a baby and discovers he actually still has a moral limit.
Hmm.
It matters on Ferrix that this man is kind to a droid.
Hmm.
When it's left with him instead of just shipping it off. Like these are small moments, maybe in like the galactic scale of things, but in Star Wars, those are the moments that create the currents that shape. the future.
Yeah. And it's not just the adults that do it too, where you have Padme and Leia at 14, although they are leaders or soon to be leaders, they're still children, teenagers doing the right thing because
Mhm.
it's the right thing.
Yes, exactly. There's that desire for connection and, and kindness and decency. All the things the empire is not so much about.
Yes. I imagine as a lifelong fan, you have some favorites of various varieties. So I'm gonna ask you about a few of those. As an author
Okay.
yourself, what is your favorite Star Wars book?
Okay. I mean, Legends, obviously, I really love, the original Thrawn trilogy. Like, such an original answer, I know, but it's classic for a reason. I also really loved those Jude Watson
Hmm.
books. I was considerably above the targeted age range, and it did not stop me at all. Um, and also, like, I have still, they published some really amazing making of books
Hmm.
in the early days. And it's interesting to me to look at those sort of compared with the stuff that you get now. And the work is all really beautiful, but there's a little bit of transparency about some of the weird roads and paths that they took
Hmm.
that you don't necessarily see all the time. Or they would include all this thing again. We no longer have a monoculture where everybody watches the same three TV channels
Yeah.
and listens to radio stations, and every person in the country could hum the number one song in the country, whether they liked it or not.
Hmm.
You know, Today, I mean, who even knows what the number one song in the country is? But
Taylor Swift,
Star Wars
probably.
dominated. Probably, yeah. I was thinking that, but does it narrow it down that much
No.
with her? No, she's got it all. But like Star Wars dominated the monoculture
Hmm.
for years, so these books would have like editorial cartoons and things like that pulled in on Star Wars just about everything. Now and then of the new books, I've enjoyed a whole lot of my fellow High Republic authors' work and felt challenged by it. That I need to step up and somehow meet it. That's one of the most fun things about the High Republic, but it's also one of the most intimidating.
Hmm.
Um, let's see. Obviously, I've enjoyed the Darth Vader comics, Dr.
Hmm.
Aphra. I really love Beth Revis's. I just like The Princess and the Scoundrel. I love that one
Hmm.
very very much. Yeah, I'm gonna be giving you a dissertation, so I'm gonna pull it in now.
Yeah, I know when you wrote The Fallen Star, and I read that in a day because several of my friends had gotten arcs, and so I got the audiobook while I was waiting for my physical copy, and I think it was around, I
Okay.
don't know, like midnight, and I'm like, okay, I can finish this book at 3 times speed if I'm really dedicated. And so I just gradually built up the
Oh
speed until I'm
no.
listening, and it's like the final third of the book, and I am chugging along, and I'm just processing
Oh my
all
god.
this information, and then it gets to the end, and I hop in a Discord chat with my friends, and they're like, "Did you finish?" Because it's in the spoiler section, and I was like, "Yeah." Ow. Then I'm like, I'm going to bed now.
Actual true story. Earlier this week, we have a Slack channel, the High Republic
Hmm.
authors, and somebody was like, "Hey, did so and so die in the Fallen Star?" And I legitimately had to answer. It's like I no longer remember the faces of all those I have killed. It's lost now. It's just lost. And then somebody said we had THR PTSD.
I can't remember the last book I read where I had that much kind of anxious energy of like the shoe is about to drop, and I don't know when it's gonna drop, but I know it's gonna drop
Shoes,
hard.
yeah, shoes were dropping all over the place. I mean,
Yeah.
we always envision the Fallen Star as the High Republic's Empire Strikes Back. You know,
Hmm.
the good guys lose, and we knew it was going to be a substantive loss. It was surprisingly difficult to write a lot of it. I'm not somebody who takes sort of glee in that, but you know, people have responded to that, and I think they're going to be very interested, or are, you know, since the books are finally coming out, you know, getting to see in Phase 3 what this all has led to.
Hmm. Yeah. R.I.P. Orla Jareni. You were a real one.
Oh, that one really hurt. I loved her.
Yeah, I was just like, oh yeah, this is such a cool character. And it's such a cool. Oh, and she's gone.
Well, I mean, you know, I'm a big fan of, among many other things, but like the old '70s disaster movies.
Hmm.
You know, like Airport and the Towering Inferno, where people like, oh yeah, on the 200th floor of this building, let's keep some turpentine and paint thinner right by the short-circuiting electrical board and see what happens. You know, Earthquake, the Poseidon Adventure, which is the greatest of them all. But one thing that these movies all do that's kind of a flaw is the people who die are the people whose stories feel like they're about to end. Like
Hmm.
their stories are naturally coming to a conclusion point. So you'll be like, yeah, they're going to make it, they're not going to make it, that's going to make it, etc. And for all that, you know, there are things about it that are kind of corny and cheesy, that's actually a thing that the 1999 Titanic does really well. You know, if
Hmm.
that ship made it to port, you'd still have a complete movie. Jack and Rose are
Yeah.
going on living their lives. They don't have any idea that an interruption is coming, you know? And so it makes the incident feel like that. So to get all the way back to the actual High Republic, like some of the people who died had to be people that it didn't feel like, oh, we've gone through an arc with this person and I see that it's at its close.
Hmm.
You know, this is an act of violence. This is an act of war. And it cuts across the grain in that way. Like it should feel jarring.
Yeah. No, that's very accurate. I remember when after the arc set came out and some of my friends to finish, and I was just like, I got one question: is Ty York in the book? Because that's my favorite High Republic character. And they're like, no, and I was upset. And then I read it, and I was like, I'm glad she wasn't in it.
Oh, you want them far away, far, far away.
Yeah. Yeah, she's fine. She's off doing her own thing, getting her own comic miniseries. Let her do her thing and not, just,
Yes,
get wiped out.
yes.
Uh so this is any era, legends or canon, who are three of your favorite characters?
Let's see. I don't think I'm going to shock anybody by saying
Of
Leia.
course.
Obviously, she was hugely formative for me because, you know, in the 70s, we did not yet have a lot of female characters who got to be in the action and got to be, you know, feisty and funny and in charge of things. She was really, really revolutionary, particularly in genre fic at that time.
Hmm.
So, you know, that's been huge. And the fact that I've gotten to write her twice is really a privilege. I also bargained a really long time to write Qui-Gon Jinn. It took years for me to convince them to give me Master and Apprentice,
Hmm.
but I really connected him very strongly in the prequels. I would say he's my favorite prequels character because, you know, when we start with the prequels, the thing is the Jedi Order has lost its way.
Hmm.
You know, like they're a police force for the Republic. You know, the thing I always say is, like, does Yoda say one wise philosophical thing in the entire prequel trilogy? And he doesn't. He's a bureaucrat.
Mhm.
Like that's what
Yeah.
he's become. Um, sorry, I had to touch the screen. Um, so what connects me to the Jedi, what I love about the Jedi, is kind of that mystical element. And it very much felt like Qui-Gon was keeping that mystical element alive. That was still something he had within him. So I was very, very drawn to him. I mean, I really enjoyed writing Ransom Casterfoe. And it is
Mm.
Casterfoe. The audiobook is wrong.
Oh.
I mean, it was
All right.
Casterfoe at Lucasfilm. I don't even know how that happened with the audiobook, because like that was his name. But I didn't actually invent him. He existed in a very preliminary form in George Lucas's treatment for an episode 7 he might make, or then of course never made.
Mhm.
But that Casterfoe, one, it was spelled with a K. Um, and I feel like you can overdo the K's in science fiction. It's like, yeah, they have their place, but don't overdo the K's. But he actually worked for Leia. He was on her staff, but he had this secret like stash of Imperial artifacts, and then he betrays her terribly. Spoilers coming up for Bloodline. And I didn't buy it when I read it, because I was like, Leia leads in canon not one but two underground resistance movements, and if she did
Mhm.
not have a very strong sense of who she can and cannot trust, she wouldn't even live all the way to A New Hope. I didn't
Right.
buy that somebody that was that close to her, she would have no inkling about. So I thought, well, what if I change this guy and make him the openly her adversary, somebody she's directly and publicly and pointedly at odds with, but he's the one who has a point because she's fought against such pure evil for so long that was something Leia hadn't dealt with a whole lot, like having to treat, having to deal with arguments that have some nuance to them,
Mhm.
and so he was really, really fun to write.
Yeah. Bloodlines. The first time I read Bloodlines is right before the. Well, actually, I can't. I don't think it was right before I saw The Force Awakens. It would have been maybe a few weeks after I saw The Force Awakens, and I'm just like, I got mad on Leia's behalf because I was just like, why would you do this to her? Why would I just? And it's so
I know.
real, especially having lived through the last decade. That I was just like, that's what makes it even more frustrating. It's like people would do this.
Yeah. And also while I was working on that, just from The Force Awakens, we knew, I felt like there was a place to just really look at. And don't get me wrong, I love Luke Skywalker. I love Han Solo. I was probably actually in love with them when I was 9 for values of romantic love when you were 9. Um, but I just thought it was kind of worth remembering. It was like she was in that fight before either of them showed up, and she was in
Hmm.
it after they were both gone. Like there, I wanted to kind of look at her as the point of the spear. She really is
Hmm.
a one of the fiercest defenders. And actually, had a young reader once come up to me at a con, and she was kind of troubled by the beginning of Bloodline, where, again, spoiler alert, Leia briefly entertains the idea of retiring.
Hmm.
Like maybe she's done enough. She's done a lot for the galaxy. Maybe
Yeah.
she could step back. And this young reader was like, but she's a hero. Like she never stops. She never lets up. She's always fighting. I don't understand how she could be wanting to go away. And what I said was there's no heroism in staying if you don't want to go away.
Yeah.
You know? The heroism is having moments of like, I am tired of this fight, because there had to be moments where she felt like that.
Hmm.
There had to be moments where she was like, have I not done enough? I've done so much. And Bloodline catches her at one of those points.
Yeah, and that's very realistic. And then you know, I think the best heroes aren't the ones that are perfect. Those are boring characters. I feel like that's when people
Mm-hmm.
misinterpret Superman. It's like, no, he's perfect. It's like he's not. That's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
He's an ideal to strive to be, but he still
Mm-hmm.
has all these flaws. And Leia, like her mother before her, is democracy's fiercest champion. And it's just fighting for
Mm-hmm.
democracy is going to get tiring in the fight of in the wake of fascism and fascist ideologues in right in your face.
Yeah, and it's gonna be discouraging. I mean, and that was
Hmm.
part of the fun and the challenge of writing Bloodline was revisiting this character that was so archetypal for me when I was young and going like looking at it through the eyes of somebody who's older, be like, oh yeah, you can win the big battle, and yet there are still problems. You know,
Yeah.
you can get with the love of your life, and yet you're still going to have to negotiate an actual relationship over years and decades and things like this. Not to undercut the idealism and the meaningfulness of what went before. And I think for some people, they kind of feel like complicating that does undercut it, and that's not how I feel.
Hmm.
Like, in some ways, I think it kind of makes that idealism, it makes it clear, like, how important that is and how much you do need that. And it's hard to hang on to. That doesn't mean you can't do it.
Yeah, absolutely. What is your favorite quote in Star Wars?
Ooh, I don't know if I have a single one, you know? Um,
Hmm.
I mean, once you take out Yoda's monologue, I mean, I guess it's like luminous beings are we, not this crude matter.
Hmm.
But there's so many lines that I love, but for so many different reasons. I mean, I've come to have like a really like um emotionally unhealthy relationship with the line, somehow Palpatine returns. It's just hilarious now that enough time has gone by.
Just like the prequels before it, it has become a meme.
Yeah, and I mean, and the thing is, in the long run, sometimes things that originally you get about later, sometimes these things become really beloved. So uh, you never know.
Yeah, we'll see what the referendum is in, I don't know, I would say 6 years. I think that'll be enough. Well, that maybe like 7, because that'll be like 15 years after the Last Jedi. We'll see. Because
Oh my God, I'm so old. Why am I so old?
hey,
I don't understand.
that's how I
Why does time move forward?
that's how I feel about the Phantom Menace 25th anniversary being. They're celebrating. I was like 25, and then some of my friends will be like, "Oh yeah, I was 2 when that came out." And I'm just like, huh, just
Yeah, yeah, I get people, like, oh, I was a baby and my dad showed me Attack of the Clones, and I'm just like I was a lawyer at that point. Oh goodness.
oh yeah, I just time moves on, and time is also made up. So that's what the last, I don't know, the pandemic taught me. It's like time doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Somebody said, and I think it's true. It was like 2020 lasted 8 years. 2021 lasted 4 weeks.
Yeah.
That's how it felt, anyway.
Oh yeah.
All right. What else can I answer for you
Uh
before we wrap up?
yeah, so your favorite musical piece from Star Wars.
Ooh, I am a Duel of the Fates girl.
Mhm.
I really love that a lot. Um, and I also really like Ray's theme, which I think is beautiful.
uh Race theme, but specifically the final steps. Uh
Oh yeah,
that's like my favorite piece in the sequel trilogy. I was just like,
Yeah.
John Williams put his foot in that piece. Like you can tell he loves Ray.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Uh,
Oh yeah. He's his work throughout all of it is just so extraordinary.
yeah, just the legend himself.
We this will be my last anecdote. It has nothing to do with Star Wars, so I know you'll be thrilled. But my husband and I recently we rewatched Superman the movie
Hmm.
from '78, which was again very formative in my childhood. And we were listening to the music again. John Williams doing incredible, breathtaking work, and there's Otis, the henchman
Hmm.
who's just an idiot, and his theme is not unlike the Ewok
Hmm.
theme. They're not the same music, but some of the same mood is getting communicated, and we decided to really lacerating put down would be like, if John Williams wrote the score of your life, your theme would be played on the bassoon.
uh, so I just have one more question for
All
you.
right.
So this could be any movie, any book, comic, audio drama, what have you. But if there was someone that had never heard Star Wars and you needed to show them, one moment, one scene, one chapter that's like this is quintessential Star Wars, what would it be?
How long are we talking about? How much time do I have to make my case with
I,
this?
I
Are we talking about 30 seconds, 3 minutes,
I'll say
3
5 minutes.
hours, 5 minutes?
Hmm.
Oh gosh. Then I think it's got to be Yoda lifting the X-wing, which at one point my husband and I figured out it's almost exactly the midpoint of the three movies.
Hmm.
If you watch them back to back, that's almost exactly the middle. But that kind of has to be it. I think it's the most. I think it's the part that really deepened the whole thing. Star Wars on its own, if they hadn't been able to follow it up, I think it would still be really fondly remembered
Hmm.
and everything. But it's what happens with Yoda in Empire that kind of grounds it and I think turns it into such a larger and deeper fantasy world.
Yeah, the I do come from a family of preachers, and I know, like, the ones that are Gen X and below, that all we're all nerds too. It's just genetic at this point. But the amount of times that Yoda has been used in a sermon.
Yeah. That's great.
Yeah. Um, but before we go, thank you again for coming on. This is a great conversation. I really enjoy talking to you as always. Uh,
Oh, thank you for having me. This was super fun, and sorry it had to be in the car.
we work with what we're given. That's all we can do in life.
Yes, it is true.
But if there is anything you want to plug or let the people know where to find you on any of the social medias, go for it.
Let's see. I don't do a lot of social media anymore. I have somebody who posts, appearances and release information, so that's out there. But I'm really only on Instagram,
Mhm.
where I can look at interior design and dogs, and Tumblr, where the 14 remaining people there are having a great time. Um, but I would say, my next releases are in June. The third in my Jane Austen mystery series is coming out. It's called The Perils of Lady Catherine de Bourgh. If you like period fiction and mystery, again, if you're a big fan of one thing, you're usually a big fan of a few more things. Definitely check that out. And then in July, I have The X-Files Perihelion, which picks up where the last television season ended. I think that was season 11. It picks up there, and we catch up with Mulder and Scully with all the incredible revelations that have happened. And of course, there's still more trouble out there that they're going to have to deal with. And if you want a signed book from me, my husband and I are about to move. So if you want a signed book that you could order from Octavia Books here in New Orleans, I would suggest going ahead and ordering that book. You can order, I'll sign whatever, they'll get it in for you, they'll send it to you. But you only have another few months to make that work, and I don't have anything set up in the new place yet. So if you want it, go get it.
All right. Well, yeah, you heard her, folks. Thank you again, Claudia, for coming on. Everybody, make sure you go check out any of Claudia's Star Wars books. Those are the ones I've read, all of them. So, like, they have my stamp of approval. I love her writing. And make sure you check out her other work, because if her quality of Star Wars is up here, then the quality of everything else is going to be up here too. I hope you all enjoyed this episode, and remember, until next time, there are more of us.